Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Life in Sport podcast. And we're joined by a very special guest. I know I say that every episode, but this is a very special guest. He is a grand final winning player for the Central Coast Mariners. Not only that, a goal scorer in that successful grand final year and multiple goals that season. Honestly, one of his best seasons in the A League. His name is Daniel McBreen. Thank you for joining us. And how's your day going so far?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, hope we can have some fun.
Yeah, sweet. So, obviously, I mean, people may not know or they may know, but you were born in Burnley over in the UK, but
Yeah.
moved over to Australia at very young, like 6, 7 weeks old, to play, like for your father to play for Edgeworth, who you eventually ended up playing for. What are your earliest memories of, your dad playing for Edgeworth?
I can't really remember, if I'm being honest, the first couple of years. The only thing
Yeah.
I've got is the photos from mum and dad. My earliest memories really of dad playing was when he was a bit older, when I was a bit older. And then he went and played, after he played in the NSL for a few years in Newcastle. He went to Wollongong and Apia.
Yep.
But I can't really remember those days because I was too young. It was more when he started playing in the state league, and I
Okay.
was a little bit older. And one of the first games I did go to watch my dad play, he was playing in Newcastle, and because he lived in Sydney and I lived in Newcastle with mum, and he said, "Come and watch me, and I'll show you how you should play the game."
Yep.
And he proceeded to get sent off by headbutting someone. So when I stood outside the
Uh,
change room waiting for him to come out, he said, "Do as I say, not as I do," and I
yeah.
learned that one from there on.
No, that's fair enough. That's a very great recollection. And before we get into the nitty gritty of it, did you have an English Premier League team or a championship team that you followed as a child?
I've always sort of kept a close eye on Burnley because I was
Yep,
born there.
of course. Yep.
Because I was removed from there, and with mum, who wasn't really a football person, I started following Liverpool like so many did because of Craig Johnston.
Okay. Yep.
Mum sort of said in the 80s, "Oh, Craig, that, as an Aussie playing for them," and I think that helped the fact that Dad supported Everton as well. So she pushed
Yeah,
me
the
down to
good
the bar.
rivalry. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, Liverpool was probably my team simply because of Craig Johnston, and yeah, I've been following them ever since.
Yeah, fair. I'm a very similar-ish reason you could say because I grew up in the very late '90s, early 2000s, Leeds United.
Yeah.
Big fan of Leeds, and I've also got family heritage. All the like my dad and all their family, all from Leeds. So Leeds tragic myself, so I absolutely understand that. And also, you wouldn't be you could be forgiven for following Burnley as well, but they are obviously a big rival of Leeds. So I'm
Yeah,
glad you don't
well,
follow Burnley.
well, it was good this morning because they've already qualified back to the Premier League, and this morning they beat Blackburn Rovers 1-0
Oh,
and
that's good.
kept them out of the top six. So it's been a good
Hmm.
morning so far.
Yeah, nice. And Leeds drew with Leicester City 1-1 this morning as well. So we're safe-ish from relegation so far.
It's close. It's
So
close.
far, there's definitely a 6 point game coming up for us. But that's enough about the teams that we follow. But let's continue your career and your journey. In '99, you scored 20 goals for Edgeworth. First of all, what was it like playing for the club that your father moved over to Australia to play for, and having such a stellar career, like season in that year?
Well, it's actually funny because obviously I played my juniors at Edgeworth, and then I'd moved around, and we'd moved when we moved, I moved clubs just because of mum was a single parent. It was hard to get places, but
Yep.
when I ended up back at Edgeworth, the 2 years we had there, I think we broke that season. We broke my dad's team's record from the late 70s and 80s of the most wins, most goals, and the least amount of goals. We didn't lose
Wow.
a game in the regular season, and they were the last team to do it, and that was 20 years earlier. So it
Isn't that
was
kind of
quite,
fitting like a full circle family moment?
yeah, yeah, it was good. And dad sort of let me know that I'd broken his record, and he wasn't happy about it. But it was enjoyable.
But
Like,
let's be honest, if he'd wanted it broken by anyone, it's better to be done by his own son.
well, exactly. That's what I tried to say, but he still wasn't having it at the
Oh.
time. So
No, that's fair enough. And obviously you moved to what would later become the Newcastle Jets, being Newcastle United. What was your time like there? Obviously, with the Jets somewhat in their infancy at the time.
well, it was actually the Newcastle Breakers when I signed for them in the old
Okay.
NSL. And unbeknownst to me, but beknown to everyone else, was that the club was in huge financial problems. And the
Oh.
moment I signed, we never got paid on time. And we did a pre-season tournament, and then I think we won that pre-season tournament, maybe. And then all of a sudden, the club folded, and
Oh. Shit.
my
Didn't even
football
get a
dream,
season.
that was it. The first football contract. I was 23 years of age, so I was a late bloomer anyway. And then within 3 months, the club had folded, and it looked like the football dream was going to be over. And that's when Con Constantine stepped in and said, "Nope, I'll take over the club." And he took us. We became Newcastle United,
Yep.
and we moved over to what was Marathon Stadium at that time. And to be fair to Con, he was, I know in the end it got taken off him years later, but he did a lot for Newcastle football. He saved the club at the time and he put a lot of money into it himself. And for me, it was a godsend because, I got to play a couple of years or a year and a bit before I went overseas, and I loved it. The first year was very difficult. I think we finished second last, and
Oof.
I got time off the bench and sort of eased my way in by Lee Sterry, who gave me my first contract, and then
Mm-hmm.
Ian Crook came in the second season and brought a lot of big name players. Your Matt Bingleys, Milan Blagojevic's, Peter Sakanis's. These guys came. Young Joel Griffiths came as well. All these guys who pretty much most of them were senior players and at very much stars of their day. And we had a stellar season. I think we finished second and missed out on the grand final by a solitary goal.
Yeah, wow. Well, I mean, kudos to obviously finishing second last to just missing out. Like that's a massive turnaround, as one will tell you. Absolutely. So that's such a whirlwind because obviously, the Jets in particular have gone through a bit of a financial turmoil time as well as of late. So I really hope that they can. I mean, luckily they were bought out by the league, so hopefully, fingers crossed, they can really, you could say, get back to where they were eventually. But enough about Newcastle. You then went over, obviously, to Europe, and all over the place, really. And one of the questions, actually, from one of the fans and listeners, Matthew Austin, shout out to him. He actually has his own media and radio station. I'll put the links in the description below to anyone listening. He asks, how did you? What was it? His question, or was it someone else's? No, it was Matthew's. Sorry. He asked, how do the other leagues that you played at compare to each other? All the ones over in Europe and Australia and all that. How do they contrast and compare? Yeah, when you're comparing them to each other, like what are the differences? What are the similarities, etc.?
Yeah, okay. Well, I can't talk for these days because we're talking 20
Yeah,
years ago or so
of
when I've been
course.
away. But, Australia was obviously a very physical league and still known to be very physical, physically demanding. When I went from here to Romania, Romania was a very technical league, but there was no, like, this is at the height of when diving was coming into the game. So
Yeah.
guys would run past you in the Romanian league and be a meter away from you and just fall on the floor and get a free kick. And it was really frustrating coming from, a league where
A
you
league where you'll give them a reason to fall over.
correct, exactly right. And we had a few foreigners in there as well, a couple of African players who were similar to me who wanted to have that physicality to play strong, aggressive football. And so Romania, I found to be very technical. As I said, not much physicality in there, but very good players technically. But when you want to go into, if you went into a crunching tackle, they didn't want to know about it. They were
Yeah.
not at all. And then I guess after there, when I was in Scotland, again, you go back to very similar to Australia, real
Okay.
physical football.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
Yeah,
It
they love
still
it.
is.
You'd almost get as big a cheer from the crowd as a striker if you ran across and smashed a centre back when he was trying to bring the ball forward as you would if you laid on a pass for a goal.
Yeah.
They loved it. You led from the front. You were aggressive. You were wanting to win your tackles, your headers. England probably lesser to a degree, good technical players, but still quite physical.
So
And
like a mix of both technical and physical.
yeah, yeah. You might be playing against some, 6'4", 6'5" defenders who are very physical, but the midfield guys were very good on the ball. Like to get into pockets and play football. It also varies from team to team as well. But I think Australian football now has the physicality, but also the technical ability as
Yeah.
well. I think we're seeing a real mixture. I think tactical awareness in Australian footballers is massive as well. I think we're very underrated in that aspect as well.
Yep.
I think the education that young players get coming up in Australia, they're very tactically aware, very tactically astute. And we're starting to see a lot more Aussie players go back overseas again. And I think that's
Yeah,
the reason.
it's great.
Yeah,
It's great to see because, as you were saying, like about maybe 10 to 15 years ago, it was, you could say, an elite group of players that had made it over in Europe, such as, the Premier League and, Bundesliga, whereas now it's almost back then it was a rite of passage sort of thing, whereas now it's if you don't make it, it's have you really given it a crack sort of thing because there's such a good academy system coming through in the A League and the W League. It's it's amazing to see that given that 10, 15 years ago it was a you had to be a big name in the A League to, get over to Europe. So kudos to the Australian League for doing that. And you're speaking of the A League, your first A League team was North Queensland Fury, who are unfortunately now folded, obviously. But what was it like going from, the NSL, NPL sort of stuff up to the A League and with North Queensland Fury of all places moving far North Queensland?
Yeah, well, I signed for North Queensland in the January, so I knew I had a few months to go. I was at York City at the time in England in the conference,
Well,
and
that's even bigger of a move, not just from Australia, but like from the other side of the world, cold weather to far North
well,
Queensland.
well, that was it. I can clearly remember the day I was at training, and it was flogging down with rain. It was muddy. The York City had good facilities. They had about 5 training pitches, but it was just one of those days where it was coming in sideways, and I was just running around without even thinking. I had a big grin on my face, and the captain came over to me and said, What is so funny? Why are you smiling so much?" And I just said, "Oh well, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm leaving. I'm going back to Australia. I've signed in a team called Townsville, and it's nice and warm. It's 26 degrees in winter." And he went, "Oh, okay, that's pretty good for you." And then I said, the other good thing about that is that Robbie Fowler's signed there as well. So I'm going to be playing with Robbie Fowler next year. And he just couldn't believe it. I
Yeah,
don't think I could
nice.
believe it until I got here. Yeah, it was just good to get back home, really.
Yeah.
And the football, look, we struggled up there. It was frustrating at times. The weather wasn't conducive as well. The football going flat out with the temperatures, but I enjoyed it. It was for me. It was good to be back around Aussies and back in home. Sort of a home environment. And I'd gone from playing 58 matches in my last season with York to coming back to Australia for a 27. I think it was 27 season match season. So
Yep.
at 31 years of age, I'll be honest, I was coming back for 1 year, and I thought I'll
Yep.
play 1 year, and that'll be me done, and I'll look to see what I do after football, and things just kept continuing on, and with
Yeah.
less games in a season, your body doesn't feel as bad, and you
Yep.
feel like, well, I can play longer here, and for me, it lasted quite a few more years.
Well, it absolutely did, and you ended up going from, the North Queensland Fury over to a big move again over the other side of the country to Perth Glory. And again, what was that like? And can you tell us? Obviously, it's many years ago now, as in compared to the teams in the academies now. But what was the differences compared to Fury and Perth Glory at the time as well?
Well, I think Perth are a big club,
Yep.
and were I think they had the idea that not being in the finals was shouldn't happen.
Failure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a failure, definitely a failure. They were a big club. They wanted finals football. The reason I left, in essence, is because I'd already signed a pre-contract to go to the Mariners for the following 2 years, and I
Okay.
sat down with Ian Ferguson, the coach, and told him, and he said, "Look, I understand that. That's fine, but I'm going to have to start playing the players who are going to potentially be here next year."
Yep.
And I said, "Well, we weren't far out of the finals, but I wasn't going to get to play to try and help us get into the finals." So I said, "Well, he said, how about a move? I want to play from Perth." So I swapped with Jimmy Downey, went over there, and yeah, look, just the attitude of the club was we need to be in finals. And I went there. I think I only was there for 7 games, the last 6 league games, I think, and a finals game.
Yep.
And we did well. We made into the finals. We lost on a penalty shootout to Wellington, but I was only there for 7, 8 weeks, so
Yeah.
it
Wow.
was it was. I probably, if I'm going to be honest, I treated it a little bit like a holiday as well.
Okay.
Football was all great, but I was there on my own, and I was only there for a short time. And
And
Stephen
again, at
McGarry,
the time, as you said, you weren't really looking for a long term thing in the A League. You were, looking to sort of wind down from football, really.
well, yeah, I just figured at 31 years of age, I'd sort of dropped down to the conference in England, and then when I came to Australia, I thought a year here. But then I'd signed that 2 year deal at the Mariners, and it was an opportunity to go play football at Perth. And to be honest, I actually loved my time there.
Yep.
Probably enjoyed the life off the pitch a little bit too
Yep.
much.
Yeah, well, they did say the Perth living is quite nice. Like some
Yeah,
AFL players who grow up in Victoria get drafted to, the Eagles or Freo, end up living there for the rest of their lives.
yeah, yeah. It was a nice place. It was a beautiful place, and um, did well, played football there, enjoyed it. And at the time, Tony Sage wanted me to stay, but I'd already committed my time
Yep.
for the next 2 years to the Mariners. So that was the next chapter that was, coming forward.
And obviously, what a chapter to start talking about. It was an amazing chapter of your career. Obviously, full circle, winning a grand final with the Mariners. Obviously, the Mariners, as I'm sure you know, the history, always a bridesmaid, never a bride when it comes to grand finals up to that point. Known as the league chokers, you could say, because of their history of losing grand finals. I mean, it was an amazing season from a fan's point of view. Growing up on the Central Coast, it was wonderful. It really was. But one question I've got for you is actually from Matthew Austin. He noticed and realized that you started doing yoga in that 2013 season. And that was maybe the big difference because you ended up going from, you could say, a lackluster type season the season before to 19 goals in that season. And really the only difference was yoga. Do you agree with that? Maybe yoga was the one of the main factors that helped you really get that form back?
I would say no.
No.
I started drinking coffee at that time as well, so it could be the coffee. But look,
Yep.
we did yoga every pre-season with Arnie got someone in, and we did yoga in pre-seasons. And look, the contributing factor really was for that season was we had a change in formation. We had some new players come in that year, and that formation and those players really suited my style of play. I just felt super confident from the start. I think the team did. We gelled with the slight tweak in the formation, the way that we played. And I think Arnie just had us all understanding the way we were playing and how we could maximise the potential for each of our teammates. And for the majority of us being together already for 2 years, and that third year, bringing in an extra little bit of cream, I would say, just to add icing on the top. I think we had the makings of a perfect season. Just that team bond.
Did you guys go into that season and throughout the season with the confidence? Obviously, every team believes they can win the grand final, but throughout the season, obviously, moods change and whatnot. Did you guys always unwaveringly believe we can do it this year?
Yeah, I can clearly remember the moment because obviously the first 2 years, 2011, 2012, Brisbane were just phenomenal, and they were our big rival for 2 years, and they had the.
I was born in Brisbane. I'm a Mariners fan because I grew up on the Central Coast, so I have a massive disdain for the Brisbane Roar. So definitely continue.
Well, I used to have a big disdain for them. It's not so much anymore. But
No.
so the first 2 years they just had the wood on us, and we felt that they were stopping us. You go back and look. I think we had the most points in a season without winning the league because they were just so far ahead. And we played them in pre-season where we tweaked our system, the way we played, and we dominated them. And we hadn't dominated Brisbane in 2 years. We'd got some results against them, and we'd had great games against them, but we never
not
dominated.
Comfortably.
Yeah, we never dominated. And this pre-season game, we only won 1-0, but we've just felt when we came off, we sat and chat after dinner. We battered them. We've got their number now. They don't know how to beat us. And from that moment on, we just felt like
invincible.
We actually thought, we thought we were going to win everything. And then Western Sydney had something to say about the premiership. But we just felt that nothing was going to stop us to win the grand final that year.
And it was amazing, which is honestly kind of great to hear that from the pre-season. Some teams, get that feel around, midway through the season where they're on a winning streak and they end up going on to win. They get that vibe mid-season, but to know it was from the pre-season is really amazing to hear that. And obviously, you kicked 19 goals in that season and won in the grand final. Tell us about grand final week leading up to the day, and obviously the subsequent grand final day.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to pre-season just quickly. Is that Graham Arnold set the scene? He's a very good at setting a culture in a club and setting processes in place and setting goal setting and where are we all heading together. In pre-season, he got us all to write down what we wanted to achieve, both individually and as a team in the year, and everybody. It turned out, which was unsurprising, win the grand final was the major one.
And what was your individual one, if you don't mind me asking?
I think that year Arnie had told me if I get 10 goals, I get another contract. So I might have wrote 10 goals just to show.
You definitely got more than that.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously we all wanted to win the grand final, and so when grand final week came, we'd played Western Sydney 3 times. I think we'd drawn one and lost, but we just felt like we had the edge on them. The grand final week we played in Brisbane a couple of years before had been. We felt like the underdogs all the way through,
Yeah,
and there was a bit of nervous tension around, and we knew it was going to be difficult. But the week of the Western Sydney grand final, it was just confidence.
yeah,
We were very relaxed. We watched. I always forget the name of the movie. Mike Bassett, England manager, the movie,
yep.
the comedy night before the game. So that was the sort of level we were at. We sat and joked and watched a stupid football movie, and we just felt comfortable. We went for a team walk the day of the match, and it just was so relaxed compared to the 2 years previous.
Yeah.
Excuse me, turn
All
that.
good.
So yeah, and it was just a real relaxed feeling, and it just felt like we knew, as I said from day dot, that
There was nothing that
we've
was
got
going to
this.
stop you from winning it.
Yeah, yeah, and it just felt that way. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, you know what? There was probably a bit of arrogance in that, but I think it was just more.
possibly. I
We
think it was.
knew,
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, as you're saying, maybe arrogance. I don't know. It may teeter on arrogance, but it's also you've got to have confidence in backing your abilities and backing your teammates. If it comes off as arrogant, I don't know, but I definitely didn't sense any arrogance, from the team throughout the season. Unlike Penrith Panthers of the last 2 years in the NRL,
yeah, look, I think there's a fine line when you've got that swagger and confidence to when you go too far, and I do think Arnie was good at making that,
keeping it
making
in
sure
check.
we never got ahead of ourselves to go look.
Yep.
You're going to make yourself a target if you go that way. So yeah, I think probably you're right. It probably was close, but not too far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously, scoring a goal in the grand final is everyone's dream, no matter what sport they play, whether it's a try or a goal or whatever. And you managed to attain that, you could say, dream, and obviously end up winning the grand final as well. Do you remember scoring that goal and the feelings that you felt right after you'd scored it?
I remember the feelings before because we'd missed 5 penalties that season, and
Yeah,
um, I just remember thinking we'd actually discussed it. There was a process again going back to Arnie and his processes. It was like there's a penalty, there's a process. Pick up the ball. Don't put the ball down till you're ready to go. So then you can come back and take it, in your own time. Don't
yeah,
let the keeper distract you. I do remember I put the ball down and went back, and the flare was thrown. I just ignored it, and I think someone Cole might have ran and got it and threw it over the fence. And I'd already been asked by Phil Moss, the assistant. He said, "Where are you going to put the penalty? Because I don't want you changing your mind. Just pick your spot and put it in that spot." And I just said same as the last one I took, which was the last round of the regular season. I put it in the same top corner,
hmm
and that's where I always was going to put it, no matter what, for weeks if I got a penalty. And it was just confidence. Just put it there, and celebration was for friends I grew up playing football with. It was a celebration we used to do when we were in our teens.
yep.
And yeah, it was just good. I can remember running around the corner flag and someone threw a beer at us. And I've had a tendency in the past to try and catch the beers. And this time, I think I missed it, and Micah McGlinchey got hit with the beer. And I
Oh,
just felt like we knew we were going to see this one out. We'd let 2
yeah.
0 go against Brisbane, but we just had confidence that we could see that one out.
And obviously the rest is history, and you did. One more question from Matthew Austin, I think it is. No, actually, it's from Joyful Penguin. He's on the CCM fans website. He said, how the hell did you manage to play and win an Asian Champions League match 2 days after winning the grand final?
We still ask that question ourselves. There's a lot to be said for sports science, and I think it
Yeah.
has a very big place in the game. But I've listened to a lot of ex-footballers from the old days talk about sports science, and they don't really buy into it. I think sometimes it's great, and sometimes you just got to go with it. And we obviously celebrated quite heartily after the grand final win, and I know
And
a
deservedly
lot,
so.
a lot of us stayed in the hotel, and I know that there's quite a few of them that didn't stay in the hotel and went out and got back just before we left to go to the airport. We flew over to Korea. We got there the night before. You normally go and train on the pitch,
Yep.
and we got to the pitch, and Arnie looked around at us all and said, "Have a stretch.
Mhm.
You just don't worry, but we're not training. Just have a stretch. Do what you got to do yourself. If you want to kick a ball, you can. If you want to do nothing, do nothing." And I think again, that's good man management. Just
Oh,
knowing
absolutely.
he could have, made us train a session where we're all like, we don't really want to. We
Yeah,
just
like we've just won the grand final. Let us chill.
exactly.
Yeah.
And look, and lo and behold, it paid off. We it was daylight robbery. To be fair, we got absolutely battered. I'd love to see the stats on the possession and the chances because I think we had one shot on goal and it was Michael McGlinchey and
And
he
it was
tucked
the
it
one that you
away.
got.
That's it. Mikey tucked it away and he was my roommate. And yeah, celebrations continued on again.
And obviously, when you got back, those celebrations continued again because Mayor of Gosford at the time and former Mariners coach Laurie McKenna organised a street parade. What was that like coming back to that?
That was unreal. I knew we had a lot of support on the coast, but when we were on that bus and we came around the corner and you could just see the sea of blue and yellow all the way down the street and then out into the main area where we ended up coming, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was that many people on the Central Coast, to be honest. They were
Yep.
everywhere, and
Yeah, Laurie said it was something like 6 or 7 thousand people, which is half of the stadium worth at least, that were just on the street for the parade.
yeah, and it was crazy. Like it just seemed to be never ending all the way down the street. Then we got round to the stage, and then when you looked back, all you could see in the distance was just blue and yellow people, supporters. It was unreal.
Yeah.
And I think obviously we had Champions League to come in a couple of weeks, so we had Arnie was nice and gave us a few days off to continue our celebrations, and then it was back into a bit of training.
Yeah, back into business, which is fair enough. Before we get into the quick fire fun sort of questions, one last question I've got for you about your career is, who was like the coach's pet during that season?
um, Coach's pet that season, Svansvik, without a
Yeah,
doubt. Svansvik pretty much almost announced himself as captain at the start of the year, even though Hutch was captain, and
yeah,
then said, "Oh no, I don't want to be captain. I've said let's give it to Hutch." He was very close to Arnie. Arnie brought him
yeah.
over from Holland,
Nah,
um,
gotcha.
and he's a good guy, Swanee, but he was definitely Arnie's boy.
Okay, yep, that's fair enough. But also definitely sounds like he was a jokester as well, like sort of
Uh,
thing as well.
Top bloke, yeah, top bloke. Not only a great footballer. I would have hated to have played against him in his 20s because when he was playing for us at 36, 37, he was phenomenal.
Yeah,
But
wow.
off the night, what a bloke! He's absolute legend. Funny as they come, straight as a die. Just tells it how it is, and just loves to have fun.
Well, one of my mates, he's actually writing a book for next year for the 20th anniversary, like commemorative book. He's getting stories from former players and whatnot. And he said Patrick's one's like spoke for about an hour for one story.
Yeah, he likes to talk, Patrick, as well.
Yep.
And if it's a story about something he's done, he'll probably. I'm surprised it was only 1 hour.
That's fair enough. And yeah, so we've got some fun quick fire questions for you. First of all, Apple or Android?
Apple,
Absolutely. How do you like your steak?
medium rare.
Nice. Do you have a beer or liquor drink of choice?
Uh, I'm a red wine man at the
Oh,
moment, but
nice.
if I was going to choose, I'd probably just be a beer man.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, this is a tough one always. The Shawshank Redemption was always my favorite for a long time.
I actually watched that the other day. It's a great film.
Yeah, I think it's got to be, if it's not number one, it's very close. So I'll
Yeah.
just stick with that.
Yeah, no, it's a very good film. What's your favorite type of music?
Oh, I'm very eclectic.
Yep.
I've got everything from classical music to heavy metal on my phone. So
Very
I'll
nice.
probably lie somewhere in the middle of like I used to growing up. All my mates were into punk rock and sort of alternative music and rock. So I'd probably say that's where I lie in the middle,
Yep.
but it shifts all
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Very similar for myself, but mine would be like thrash metal and metal would be my like middle part, and like everything else, like classic to punk and pop is on the other side. So absolutely great. If you could
Yeah.
have a superpower, what would it be and why?
Um, I asked this to my kids the other day, and we had a debate about it, and we never came to a conclusion. Actually, I
Yep.
always wanted to fly,
Yeah.
just fly, just be able to get around everywhere, just fly.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's honestly would be so much quicker. What's your go-to canteen snack at the local football park?
It'd be probably a pie with sauce.
Yeah, nice. You can't go wrong with a pie with sauce. So that's it for the quick fire questions, and then I've got a few more questions to wrap up. Um, you could say the interview, etc. So Joyful Penguin submitted another question, and he asked, in your opinion, who is the greatest Mariners player of all time? Obviously, other than yourself for scoring a goal in the grand final.
Greatest Mariners player of all time. Oh, look, there's been plenty, haven't there? Look, I think Patrick Svansvik was up there. I think he was a
He'd
phenomenal
probably
player.
agree.
Yeah, he definitely would agree. He would say for sure, yeah, no problem. It's definitely me. Um, Look, as far as quality, he was probably up there.
Yep.
Matt Simon, for me, just, well, his goal scoring ability, but also his longevity and what he did from where he came from and what he achieved and how he kept going and what he did. I think he's got to be, if
In
not,
the conversation.
yeah, if he's not like an absolute legend of the club, then there is no such thing. John Hutchinson obviously was there. John Hutchinson always used to talk himself down though and say that he's the piano carrier and all of us up front were the piano players. So he could bring the piano in, put it down, and he does all the dirty work while we get all the glory. So
Yep.
I think he's one that was definitely, with his commitment and what he did for the club. There's so many though. Like I don't want to feel like I'm letting people down.
No, that's
letting
fair
people
enough.
down.
It is a very it's a very, you could say, um ego type question. Like there's so many that are legends, those ones
Yeah.
that you mentioned are definitely in the conversation. Everyone's in the conversation. Anyone who's pulled on the blue and yellow is worthy of being in the conversation.
Yeah, I just think when I look at players like that, I think got to look at not only how good of a player they were, but how long they served the club, what they did for the club, how attached to the club they were. And I just think those guys, Simo and Hutch in particular, those
Yep.
two were standouts for me. When I think of the Mariners, they're two names that first
Those
stick
two
out.
names and Danny Vukovic, who's currently playing, is definitely a
100%.
name that comes up as well. So
Yeah.
absolutely agree with those three. Of course, with yourself, Patrick Svonsvik, and I'd probably say Dean Heffernan is one of them as well in my head.
Hef, no
Yeah,
chance.
no
No,
chance.
no chance. No, I'm not giving Hef nothing.
Fair enough.
No,
Fair.
I love Hef. Me and Hef get along well, and but we never give each other any praise whatsoever. We like to give it to each other.
I love that. That's so amazing to hear that. I'm just trying to see if there's any other final questions. The Asian Champions League match. Joyful Penguin also asks, if the Mariners do finish second and qualify for the AFC Cup, do you believe they have what it takes to win it?
I do actually, the AFC Cup. I've played in the AFC Cup when I was at Hong Kong, in Hong Kong, and they definitely could win the AFC Cup. I think Australian football needs to go into that division for a little while because we're not getting much joy in the Asian Champions League. And I think that's probably where we need to go. And we will have real opportunity to win some silverware in Asia if we're in that division. I think it's probably a little hard in the Champions League with the budgets the other teams have for us to really, like, how Western Sydney did it, I still don't know.
Yeah, right.
Unbelievable. Like what they did was unbelievable.
It was amazing for Australian football as well. Absolutely.
Without a doubt. And Adelaide made it to the final as well, which I think was incredible with the budgets these other clubs have. Even when we get to the AFC Cup, there's going to be some of these other clubs and other nations that have budgets way, way more than us.
But it'll still be a little bit more of an even playing field for us.
I think so. So I think we could have an opportunity to win some silverware there.
Yeah, sweet. And obviously, I've got just two final questions. First of all, what are you doing with yourself now, like these days?
I'm a commentator for Paramount Channel 10 on the A-League, which I really love doing. I've, sort of did it part-time for 6 years, and now I'm full-time doing that. But also got my own academy. Well, I've got to start in the academy only last school term with Roy O'Donovan, Taylor Regan, and Ben McNamara, 3 other ex-professionals. And we just want to help kids who are not selected in the Mariners or Jets Academy, but probably have the ability to be there or close enough to be there, that we want to give them extra training sessions at a professional level with all
to get them there, sort of thing,
to help them try and bridge that gap to potentially stepping up to the A-League level as well. So that's what awesome. We're doing at the moment. Really enjoy that. Kids between the ages of 10 to 16. And that's, I get a lot of enjoyment out of coaching the kids and trying to help them just to become not only better footballers, but more rounded individuals as well.
Yeah, nice. Do your kids play football?
I've got 2 boys. One does. He plays in the Jets 13s, and the other one can't stand it. He's more an art and cartoons kind of guy.
Yep.
So Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. And one final question is, what's next for Daniel McBreen?
Um, well, hopefully we can continue with I can continue with the commentary with Channel 10, and it gets
Yep.
bigger and better. And the A League continues to grow. I'm really looking forward to seeing
The B League?
the B League and promotion relegation and watching
Oh,
see
I'm
how that.
so excited for that.
Yeah,
Obviously,
I
I
think.
hope we don't get relegated, but I'm still excited.
Yeah, look, yeah, but that's good for the whole ecosystem. I think everybody knows that.
Yeah,
And now
absolutely.
everyone's pointing to Wrexham at the time, but that shows what can be achieved. What if you want to go somewhere and improve, then it just gives people hope and that drive to make them each club to be better and push, and it'll eventually make football better all around in Australia. And I just want to also hopefully keep our academy going. It's only just started, but improving on that, hoping to help more kids get involved in that. And if we can help kids move into, Mariners or the Jets or go and realise their dream as professional footballers, then for me, that'd probably make me the happiest.
Yeah, nice. And to round out this episode, obviously your career went full circle and you finished at Edgeworth a few years later. What was that like returning back to Edgeworth?
Yeah, it was good fun. Played there from 38 to 42 years of age with a whole heap of young kids around me. So they did all the running for me.
Yep,
Um,
they did all the
I
grunt
had a
work
great
for you.
coach. Yeah, that's it. I told them I'm not running. You've got to do that. So that was good. We were quite successful. Had a great coach in Damien Zane, who's now the Jets youth team coach, who I value very highly as a coach and a friend. And it was great stuff. And I actually was training with them in pre-season this year as well before I snapped my Achilles, which is currently
Oh.
on the mend. So
And how is that going on the mend?
it's getting there. It's slow. It's a slow process. So I've still got like a
Moon
plaster,
boot thing?
thing on my foot that I've got to wear. So just
Yeah.
time. It's keeping me off the training paddock at the moment, which is keeping me a bit frustrated.
Yeah, fair enough. And I guess, yeah, I just thought of another question, but it will be the last one. What game are you commentating this weekend so people can be sure to catch it on, Paramount Plus and whatnot?
Well, Friday night, I've got a huge game.
Mm.
Adelaide versus the Mariners.
Yes. Yep.
So I kind of asked for a better game to round out the regular season. Second place up for grab in that home grand final. Hopefully, I don't want to be too biased, but say hopefully the Mariners can do it. The boys can get
Fingers
up.
crossed.
Yeah. And yeah, it'll be good to see them finish second. It's been great. I think Monty's doing a fantastic job, and I think when you talk to
Absolutely.
the players as well, and they all talk highly of him, you know that he's a good coach. And then I've got Melbourne Victory in Brisbane on Saturday as well.
Yeah, very nice.
So,
Obviously, I'll tune into the Mariners Adelaide, but I don't know if I'll tune into the Melbourne Victory game. But regardless, should be good fun. Should be great to hear your voice ring out over the commentary. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and thank you very much for your time. And yeah, have a good rest of the A League season. What's left of it, obviously.
yeah, hopefully it'll be a great final series. I'm sure it will. Thanks for having
Fingers
me.
crossed, and hopefully the Mariners lifting the toilet seat, you could say, at the end of the season.
It'd be a nice synergy. 10 years from the year we did it, it'd be lovely.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, fingers crossed, mate. Take care, and thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye.